Hello and welcome to another episode of Sensational She-Geek live from Yancey Street. Today is Monday, April 5th, 2021, and this is episode 12A, as it is a Monday A episode. We're going to kick things off with talking about this week's comic book pull list, things that are going to be coming out tomorrow for DC on Tuesday the 6th, and Wednesday for all the other publishers on the 7th of the month. Of course, when I go over the comic book pull list, I will have some spotlights on comics of really good representation, so we'll cover that then. The rest of the episode is going to be focused on more of live-action things. We have, of course, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, episode 3, going through that episode in depth. After that, some more MCU things with the Black Widow trailer breakdown. They had another trailer, of course, that will be coming out I believe July 9th later this year, as long as that date doesn't change again. We also have, it came out this morning, the Loki trailer breakdown that I'm going through, kind of explaining what everything is in that, what to expect. After the MCU things, I decided to do a proper breakdown of Godzilla vs. Kong, because I really did have a lot of fun with it, and it was really on par with Justice League in my opinion, so I gave Justice League that kind of treatment. I might as well give Godzilla vs. Kong that kind of treatment. And finally, of course, I am continuing my Black Lightning binge. I'm somewhere into season 3 now, so I'll go over where I'm at in that. And of course, once I catch up with wherever we are in that series currently, I will be doing episodic breakdowns. So a lot of things to cover in this episode. It is a beautiful Monday, so let's go ahead and get started with the comic book pull list, including spotlights on representation, which is going to be Green Lantern number 1, The Next Batman Second Son number 1, which is going to be of 6, America Chavez, Made in the USA, number 2, Sensational Wonder Woman, number 2, Joker Harley, Criminal Sanity, number 8, Far Sector, number 11, and then finally Excalibur, number 20, before we go into a handful or so of other comics that are coming out this week. So let's go ahead and get started with those. To start us off is Green Lantern, number 1. This is, of course, a pre-Future State, I suppose, Green Lantern story. It's going to be written by Jeffrey Thorne with art by Dexter Soy, and it will be following Teen Lantern Kelly Quintilla, no idea if that's how you say her last name, potentially with Jon Stewart and Simon Baz leading her on this mission. She is a character who I am not super familiar with, but I know that she has some crazy different kind of powers than the rest of the Lanterns. And in the, the Infinite Frontier, anthology one-shot kind of thing that they did, it showed John and Simon taking her to, I believe, Oa, to the different, to the Guardians. I could be wrong on that, but, this series, basically is going to be following, for the most part, Teen Lantern, and Jon Stewart will be there with her. Not sure about Simon Baz. I would really like to see him here because I thoroughly enjoyed that Green Lantern series from the beginning of Rebirth is when it was. It was Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz. Jessica Cruz, of course, being my all-time favorite Lantern. So sad she's not in this. Maybe we'll get a cameo or something. I don't know. But I would at least hope to see Simon in that. And that's, of course, also because he is the only Muslim Green Lantern. And that would be kind of nice to keep him around, just like it would be nice to keep around the Latina Green Lantern, Jessica Cruz, but, you know, they for some reason are being shuffled into oblivion for an unknown amount of time. But, that being said, definitely check out this Green Lantern series if you're a fan of Jon Stewart, because apparently it's going to be going into his past, which, you know, it has a lot of kind of dark history to it, as many Lanterns do. So, if you're a fan of Jon Stewart, and you don't really care about Kelly, then it's fine. Go ahead and pick this up. I'm sure that you will still get some enjoyment out of it, because Jon is one of the main characters. John Ridley is back to writing Tim Fox with The Next Batman, Second Son number 1, out of the 6-part miniseries that is starting this week. It's going to be his time as coming up to be Batman, filling in the estrangement and other things that we see in Future State when he is Batman, I suppose filling in whatever his issues with drugs were that they called him out for. Whatever it is that they thought he was so selfish about, we're going to see that all play out in the series, potentially ending with him picking up the cowl or deciding to pick it up. I'm not really sure. The timing of everything is kind of funky. We're obviously not going to cross over multiple years in the next 6 issues of that coming out for the DC canon, so I thought that we were going to stick with Tim Fox's Batman post-Future State kind of anyway, when that all started going, and I'm kind of disappointed that we're back to exactly what we were at with Batman before. So, although Detective Comics with Marcos Giamacchi has been excellent, apparently, I'm getting this because I'm interested in Tim Fox being Batman in the future, and I'm hoping that will continue to happen. And we also had the tease in I believe, Batman Black and White issue 1 or 2, of his younger sister being his future Robin. So it is also possible we'll see that relationship develop to that point as well. America Chavez Made in the USA #2 is one that I am definitely looking forward to this week. Written by Kalinda Vasquez with art by the ever-brilliant Carlos Gomez. First issue was absolutely wonderful. I'm a big fan of America Chavez myself. I'm absolutely thrilled that we're going to get any version of her in the MCU starting in Multiverse of Madness. I am a big fan of Carlos Gomez drawing her, and so far a big fan of Kalinda Vasquez writing her. We're getting a lot more insight into her character. This series is doing what I like to see from... This is her second series, right? So this series is doing what I like to see from what you might consider a sequel. They're not changing things that we already know. They are adding things to it to fill in areas that were kind of just not addressed before. And what that is America's life from between the time that she came to Earth 616 and started becoming a hero. I guess you could technically call that in, what was that series where it's got Magneto on the cover, where it's her first appearance? I'll figure it out, but it's, I didn't get it. I remember I almost bought it, and then the news broke that she was coming out in the movie, and its price skyrocketed, so I missed it, and I will never forgive myself for that. But anyway, it's not really the same version of her anyway, so it's fine. Whatever point, it's filling in the gap between her coming to America and her starting heroing, basically. Whatever point you want to see that as. So what we have in this series is someone who knows more about America's life than we, the audience, have been privy to so far, has been using that information to attack her as best as they can see where it will hurt the most. They must be someone from her past, I figure, who we haven't met yet. Potentially the girl from the first issue in the beginning who was interviewing America mid-fight for some reason about her past. She was a very, very pushy, college student reporter type of deal. But she clearly had some kind of insight on things, so she started asking interesting questions about the neighborhood that America lived in during that time, which she had never told anyone, so that gets America, distracted. But anyway, that girl just kind of runs off, so it's potentially her. However, America didn't recognize her, and I figure this is somebody who she actually knows. She does have the new girlfriend, who I have failed to research if that is a character who is new to this series, or if she's stuck around, or she's been around before. I thought America had been with a woman who was a nurse with Jane Foster, alongside Jane Foster, I suppose. But this character is clearly a fellow super type and might be a cyborg. It's honestly hard to tell. And I'm sure, hopefully, they'll go into that. But I really love this. It was a nice first issue. The second issue, I imagine, will be kind of setting things up. Who knows if this is when we're going to see the villain. We had a cameo in the last issue, didn't see their face, or really any other part of them besides what they were wearing. Which is a, sweater and stuff. So really curious about who that's going to end up being, if it's going to be somebody who we know already or not. And it also occurs to me now, what the title of the series means, Made in the USA. The series is going to be about, obviously, like I said, about the part of her origin that took place after she left the utopian parallel and before she became the superhero that we know. So, Made in the USA. Got it. I was kind of confused about that before the series started, and I was really concerned that they were going to say, oh, just kidding, she's not from the utopian parallel, she's from 616 US. I would have hated that. But this is not that at all, and so I love it. Next up, Sensational Wonder Woman #2. This is, or I suppose was, a digital-first anthology series. It was, I believe, 3 digital issues to 1 print issue, so now being on issue 2 for print, this would be 4, 5, and 6 for the digital stuff, what that correlates to. But this whole thing was put out to celebrate Wonder Woman's 80th anniversary, and for the most part, this is all female, creative teams, for the most part. I believe this issue has a male artist, who is Bruno Redondo. I apologize if I'm misgendering you, but the writer here we have is Andrea Shi, who is a really big time, it appears, editor at DC. I'm not sure what she has written before, but she's been involved with Aquaman, Teen Titans, Justice League, Action Comics, and notably for my interests, most recently edited the Future Sight Aquaman books, the two issues of that came out. So clearly she has a good head about her, so I'm really curious what she has to write about Wonder Woman in this second issue of Sensational Wonder Woman. Of course, the first issue was Stephanie Phillips, the Harley Quinn current ongoing series writer, alongside Megan Hetrick, who I am a patron of, and I suggest you be too as well. Beautiful interiors. Hetrick's interiors are a lot more animated than her covers, which she tends to paint and everything herself, and it ends up being a completely different beast. And I adore it. But anyway, it was a great first issue, and in the spirit of Wonder Woman, so I will be expecting the same kind of thing with the second issue, written by Andrea Shea, whatever it is. When we have Joker Harley Criminal Sanity #8 by Cami Garcia and Filipino artist Miko Suyan. This, I believe, is the final issue. There might be one more. I think there's one more, but we just haven't gotten a solicitation for it because it's gone from being a monthly book to a quarterly book. I'm not sure why. But that's fine. It's good, and it's good enough that I could remember pretty much what happens between the issues. So I think that's a big thing to say about it. Cami Garcia is a writer who I have read some things before. I believe she had a couple of her books made into movies, if I'm not mistaken. I could be confusing her with another YA writer from when I was in high school, but she has been writing for a good while. I thought it was kind of funny that a writer who I followed when I was younger has crossed over into comics now that I'm older. Criminal Sanity is basically following Harley Quinn, the investigator, as she tries to catch the Joker. It is a Black Label series. It is not for kids, or for the squeamish, because this Joker is kind of using his scenes of murder and to try and impress Harley, I guess. He's trying to, he knows that she's this criminal investigator and has the mind of the, criminal psychiatrist, whatever it is that she's doing. So he's trying to impress her because he knows that she understands that kind of thing. Blow her mind, I suppose. So he goes all out with some of these brutal, art pieces that he's doing. But it makes for a really interesting, mostly black and white crime series. And hopefully when it comes out on collected edition, people will, I feel like it's done it a little bit of disservice having it come out so few and far between now. Because a lot of people have dropped it between the issues, loss of interest, etc. I feel like it's fantastic, so I haven't lost interest in it between the months that it hasn't come out. And hopefully when it comes out, like I said, on collected, people will pick it up and discover how great it is again. And then we have Far Sector number 11, which of course is by N.K. Jemisin and Jamal Campbell. This week, or this month I should say, we have a variant cover by Mirka Andolfo, who is an Italian artist who I adore. She's got this really cute cover of kind of a Joe headshot, so it's really nice. I've talked about the series so much on this podcast and on my website already. Even on my Instagram too, I think. It is just, it's amazing. It is shockingly relevant in the material that they are putting in it. It is inspiring. It is intriguing on the terms of a Green Lantern fan, if you just like that kind of stuff. It is a new kind of way of telling a Green Lantern story, because as we got revealed in Future State, and they kind of spoiled, I guess, I don't recall which came first, if it was the issue of Far Sector, I think it was number 9, where they finally tell you what it is that's different about Joe, what it was that this guardian who had approached her at the bar and given her this ring that she said was different for some reason, what it is that's different about it. And they revealed that in Future State, I think around the same time. But the reveal was basically Joe, most rings, they have to be charged. You use your will, and then they have to be charged to continue using the power of the ring, because your ring is connected to Oa and the main battery, right? So because there's some issues with that have been kind of going on in the background of the DC universe for a good while now, with the whole battery situation and the rings and the lanterns and blah blah blah. I guess Joe was chosen to try this new ring out, and this new ring is a self-charging ring, because as the kind of tease into this, what the ring does was what Joe does, and what where normally Green Lanterns are chosen for their ability to overcome fear with their willpower, Joe is chosen for her ability to continue living through her fear with her willpower, because she is a black woman in the US, or I guess in space right now, but she is a black American woman. She was a police officer, and she did have the experiences that she had, and as a young woman, the experiences that she had growing up. And so they chose her as, this woman who lives with fear in her life every day, but still continues to live through it. And she has no control over many of those factors that cause that fear in her life, but just her being who she is, and society's reaction to it. And so that's really, that was a tease to it. And then of course, the ring being self-charging is due to her consistent will, to live through fear. So, really, really cool that she is that kind of new Lantern. I think that she is right up there with Jessica Cruz as far as favorite Green Lantern characters of all time go. She is, what would you say, omnisexual? She is attracted to men, women, and alien types, so whatever that one is, pansexual, omnisexual, I never figured it out. They're kind of interchangeable as far as I understand. But it's and then of course Jamal Campbell's art. I don't recall if he had a colorist earlier on in the series, but he does not now. He does it all himself now, which could be why it started coming out every other or every third month. Just fine. It's take your time. If it's going to come out as good as it's coming out, take your time. I love it. It is fantastic. I'm so glad that it was like the second issue or the third issue of Far Sector had come out, and I kept hearing good things, and I went back to my comic shop and got the last of issues 1, 2, and 3, and just fell in love with it. So I will always remember that as being an excellent decision. Far Sector, I can't recommend enough to people who like this kind of thing. I can't say enough good things about it. And finally, for my spotlights, Excalibur number 20, written by Teenie Howard, who I adore as a person. She got the job writing X books under Jonathan Hickman by reading up on his personality and seeing that he does, like TED Talk kind of things, for getting what you want and being assertive and things like that. So she marches up to him, looks him in the eye, and tells him her plan for the series and what she wants to, basically what she wants the job to be for writing this. And he stands there and he looks at her and goes, okay, meet me tomorrow at whatever time and we'll talk about that and we'll get you going. It's like, I always have to tell that story. It's so paraphrased. It's probably got details wrong, but it's basically the gist of it. It's her story, obviously, and it's fantastic. So I wildly respect Jonathan Hickman as a person, so it's really fun to see her kind of doing the dream thing for, as an aspiring person who does write and has creative ideas and admires the hell out of Jonathan Hickman. That was it's a fun story, I think. I always love telling it. But Excalibur, she writes it. That's the story that she pitched to him. She has an excellent grasp of these characters, and now we are finally going over the Betsy Quanon situation. So there'll be a little bit more of that in this issue. Kind of trying to smooth out decades of wrinkles between these two female characters. That's not even their fault. So really, really enjoying the crap out of Excalibur. And that wraps up the spotlights for the week. For the additional comics, we have Silver Coin #1, Sonya Versal #3, King in Black #5, Bliss #6, which is of 8, Marauders #19, and Avengers #44, which is a series I do not normally read, but I am picking up, and I'll talk about why when I get there. So starting off with the Silver Coin #1, it is going to be an anthology series of stories taking place in the same connected universe, following, as I understand it, a coin that gives the bearer/owner good luck, but at a terrible price. And you see on the cover of this issue, you have a guitar player he's holding the coin like a guitar pick, and it's blood all over his hands. So you can imagine it's going to be a horror series. You can imagine what kind of price that's going to be for these characters. The artist Michael Walsh will be joining a new writer on each issue. It's going to be just one story per issue, all with Michael Walsh, but with different writers. So this first issue is going to be Chip Zdarsky. Good enough reason for me to say, hell yeah, I'm picking that up. Other writers that are going to be appearing are going to be Kelly Thompson, another writer who I really love, Ed Brisson, who is a fantastic horror writer, and Jeff Lemire, who I suppose you can say the same about, a bit of a legend, I think, in comics. So Silver Coin, it's going to be kind of a fun, ongoing anthology series of stories. Sonya Versal #3 continues into wild and craziness. This issue solicitation I had to put here, and I want to say that here because it's probably better at describing what's going on in the series than I am. So it says, it's a Sonya Battle Royale. Sonyas, as in multiple Sonyas, wage war on one another across the infinite and varied expanse of hell, and the prize for the war's winner, the chance to murder Red Sonja. Ridiculous mayhem courtesy of Christopher Hastings and Pascal Colano. It's pretty ridiculous. Issue 1 was kind of confusing. Issue 2 fixed the situation, but then ended with me being confused again. And now, with the solicitation, I figured out what it was that was happening. They have been all sent to hell to fight each other. I really wasn't really sure, really, if that was going to happen, what was happening. This is basically like the monster movie of comics. It's kind of just this crazy, ridiculousness that's going on, but it is backed by actual plot, which is also, something that's interesting. It's backed by, there's apparently some kind of Sonya goddess who is, she's got the Sonya prophet, and the prophet tells the different Sonyas based on what the goddess says to go kill Red Sonja. It's really ridiculous, but it is backed by a semi, some kind of, hopefully we'll get more of that plot, as we go along. Yeah, it's just a bit crazy, but I really like it. King in Black #5, of course, is the final issue of the main event. There's going to be ongoing tie-ins to this for the next 2 months, which kind of sucks, to be honest. I gotta take that back. It's not going to suck. It's going to be, it might be a little bit annoying. But the tie-ins have been all better than the main issues, so at least it's not more main issues being mediocre. we ended issue 4 with Captain Universe being the god of light is kind of what it was seen as now. There was never really any explanation to Captain Universe, so at least they're trying to do that now, so that's nice, I guess. And then Captain Universe, I think it chose Eddie Brock, and then Eddie Brock was kind of dead, so he's only got a couple issues of Venom left, and he might end up, off planet or something. I don't even know, but what I'm wondering mostly about this is if Scream is going to appear, because the King in Black Scream tie-in, which was last week or 2 weeks ago, absolutely phenomenal piece of comic book writing and art. And it ended basically with Scream and Andy Benton, her host, kind of linking up their dual power sets and using them to actually be able to harm Noel. Even if it's just for a moment, they are able to do that. And it kind of ends with them running off going, wow, so now we know how to kill him. And then it ends. Like, you would think now they're going to show up in King in Black #5, the finale of this whole thing, and that's going to be, how this ends, is because it's her. I don't know, maybe she will appear. Maybe it'll be her teaming up with Captain Universe, who is Eddie Brock now, supposedly. Who knows? And then we still have Dylan, who probably has a role in this, maybe. It's whatever. I'm more interested in, I guess, things that might be spinning out of this, like this potential future Scream issue. 1 or 2 more, I would literally take anything. We also have this week Bliss number 6 of 8. I will be so sad when this is over because Sean Lewis and Caitlin Yarsky are geniuses. This is a beautiful series. I am officially obsessed with Yarsky's art, and I think this is only the 2nd or 3rd comic series she has ever done. It's phenomenal. And also the character design on the cover of this issue, in case you were wondering, is Yarsky. She did confirm she visually designed it after AOC, who she says is her political hero, which I respect. I respect that very much. She is a really, really just phenomenal artist, and of course, Sean Lewis has a great storytelling brain. So I have the solicitation here because it's kind of hard to explain if you're not reading it. Basically, it's like a crossover of a fantasy world that kind of infected our world. Kind of literally infected our world, and then the characters who are, I guess, spinning out of that. So the solicitation, in case you're wondering, is whatever happened to Perry's mother, Mabel? For issues, the question has floated, and now we discover the fate of our heroine. As Benton relives his path from monster to reconciliation, and Perry desperately tries to return with the one thing that he believes can save his father, the goddess Leith probes deep into both men's pasts to bring back the one pain neither of them can live with. It's a very, it's dark, but it's so heartfelt. I'm probably gonna end up getting this on collected edition when it comes out as the full 8 issues in one edition, which I really hope they do. It's beautiful works of art on the interior and the covers, and just phenomenal storytelling. It's issue 6 of 8, so I'll be sad when that's over, but I am so excited to see how this concludes. Marauders number 19 is going to continue with the Marauders stuff that's kind of been maraudering. I guess we have confirmed now that Callisto is Emma's White Knight. I didn't really realize that until I was looking at the rundown for this issue, which really wasn't that much information besides basically Marauder's gonna marauder. So that's kind of cool. I'm glad that she's kind of back and doing things. One thing that is interesting about the next issue is the solicitation speaks about this being the kickoff to a new era for Storm. So kind of curious what that's going to be, kind of nervous about what that's going to be. Jerry Duggan has been doing a great job with his X-Men stuff. This was really fun. So far we've had a lot of fun with it. So, this issue, we'll have fun. As Kitty Pryde and Bishop and Callisto hanging out and doing stuff. Who's not going to have fun with that? I think Nightcrawler was one of the characters too, who was listed in being in it, or at least on the cover. Which doesn't mean much, we all know. Yeah, Marauders 19, it'll be a good issue, but I'm more interested in what's happening in number 20. And finally, Avengers number 44. I have not been reading the series. I do like Jason Aaron's writing, but this has kind of faltered for me for a while. Supposedly, this issue is the reveal, finally, of the new Phoenix. I haven't been keeping up with it, like I said, so I don't have any actual idea if my theories have any ground whatsoever. But my theory is it's either going to be She-Hulk or some random D-list character. My reasoning behind that is the cover, which we all know covers lie, but looking at the Women of the Avengers, I'm pretty sure it's a female character, and looking at the Women of the Avengers, she's the one who doesn't have her own series happening right now. Black Widow does. She's kind of a part-time member anyway. And Captain Marvel does. And that's the only woman that there are. So it could be that. It could be some random D-list character, like, I don't even know. Let's say that's like Nova. I talked about her in the last episode. Frankie Ray's Nova. Maybe it's her, some random D-list character who hasn't been around for a long time. I don't know if she's D-list, maybe C-list, but you get what I'm saying. The only other theory that I had, which I hope this is not what happens, is the new what is it the not Starfire, that's in DC, the Star Brand. God, it took me a second. The Star Brand, the baby, right, little baby girl. They could do some bullshit and age her up and make her the new Phoenix, which, same concern at that point that I would have with She-Hulk becoming the new Phoenix is, there's this thing, the Queen of Fables syndrome is what we call it in our house, due to that hilarious episode of Harley Quinn. But it's a real thing, where female characters tend to get, like, somebody gets too enthusiastic and writes them, like, so overpowered that they can't be stopped, and the next person comes in, kills them off. We can't have somebody too powerful like that. But, then you have Superman, and nobody's ever had a problem with him, Anyway, those are just my mild concerns and my probably foundless theories, but I will be picking up 44 of Avengers to see who that ends up being. And that wraps up my pull list for this week. Like I always say, my pull lists are nowhere near the complete amount of comics that are coming out on any given week, so be sure to look into that and see if there's any other things. Ask your local comic shop. They'll be happy to help make some money off of you and your interests, and I'm sure you will love it in return. Next up, further things we're going to cover in this episode of the podcast is episode 3 of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is coming next. And then I'm going to talk about the Black Widow and the Loki trailers in fair amount of depth. And finally, Godzilla vs. Kong, because why not? So Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode 3. This episode was written and directed by the creator of the John Wick series, which I found out afterwards, and it explained a lot, but in a really, really good way. The scene setup, the fight sequences, the fight choreography, etc. It was all reminiscent of the Wick movies, and overall just looked really phenomenal on screen and for the setting. I had been previously wondering how Zemo was going to get out, right? A flaw possibly of Bucky and Sam's visit, the Flag Smasher involvement, or, I thought less likely they'd pull some stupid shit and break him out themselves, thinking that's a good idea. Well, believe it or not, this episode basically starts with Bucky breaking him out, which I could not believe, because I was literally joking about, there's no way they're that stupid, as I was pressing play on this episode. And that's basically how this shit starts. Bucky goes in alone to the prison. This is how that all happens, right? Bucky goes in alone to the prison, saying he might react, that Zemo, oh my god, Zemo might react poorly to seeing Sam because of their whole history. It's a very complicated thing because the whole Civil War, etc., right? Okay. So Bucky goes back afterwards and is telling Sam this plan to break Zemo out, leaving out the part that they actually went through with it as Zemo walks up behind him. My immediate thought, which is this guy killed King T'Chaka and framed the Winter Soldier, so Wakanda is going to have something to say about him being free even illegally like this. Probably especially illegal. Oh, yeah, especially illegally like this. And remember, Bucky has a relationship with Wakanda, so this is going to complicate things extremely. And this is something that Sam even mentions earlier on in the episode, warning Bucky before he even knows that Zemo's already out. And in the scene of Zemo and Bucky in the cell, they have, the back and forth and whatever they do. Zemo tests out the old Winter Soldier code words, makes some joke about how at least he wasn't conscious for most of his imprisonment, yada, yada, yada. And then moving on, I guess Bucky, I was gonna say Sam, Bucky decided to let him out because they need his help with figuring out where the super soldier serum is coming from these days. That's what I did it again. That's what Bucky went there for. And that is why he has gone ahead and broken him out, and that is why Sam has not immediately brought him back into government custody or whatever. Because they figure they do actually need his help. Zemo was a Hydra agent, but he was the one who wanted to stop the super soldier program, so he has still connections. It also turns out that he's super rich, which they mention his title of Baron, which is from the comics, and how his family was royalty at one point in time. Therefore, the travel arrangements are not a problem for a guy like Zemo. He's got his little butler man waiting for him, ready to go with a private jet, so that's nice. On the flight, the three of them talk about the book that Steve had in Winter Soldier and so on, when he came out of the ice to help him acclimate to everything that had happened kind of between him going in and him coming out, right? So, now it looks like, and Sam had, he had the connection to the book because he had given Steve some suggestions to it, right? That was in Winter Soldier when they first met. That was a nice throwback moment. And now it turns out that Bucky has the book, which means that Steve, probably in his old age after everything, before he, I guess, died, gave the book to Bucky to help his friend acclimate to modern life and modern history, which is so cute. Tiny little tearjerker heartstring pull there, but exactly the kind of thing that Steve would do for his friend. Zemo takes them on his plane to Madripoor, which comic fans will recognize immediately as a major fictional Marvel location. In the comics, Madripoor is basically a no man's land of a type for villains, thieves, felons, otherwise unsavory types to gather, fight, kill, make deals, and cause chaos in general. My first thought was Madripoor was Patch, Logan's eye-patched, white-suited alter ego. It's just me getting excited. It's way too early for that. Zemo mentions Lowtown and Hightown during their conversation, known areas from the comics as well. Madripoor ended up basically being the same as it was in the comics, all kinds of madness going on in all kinds of places. Zemo has Sam disguise himself as a South African tradesman of a sort, as an actual person, and then himself as himself, Zemo, and Bucky as the still in service Winter Soldier. So it's a little bit rough. He has to kind of relive that. They go to a bar from the comics, the Brass Monkey, to get information. It ends up causing a bit of a scene. The character Sam plays is Conrad Mack, the Smiling Tiger. They joke about how the nickname is not any better than the regular name, who is a character from the comics. Apparently at one point in the comics, he stole an Avengers Quinjet and crashed into Madripoor. I doubt that's going to be a thing that happens. It's just kind of a fun tidbit. After the bar, they meet up with a woman called Selby, who I did some research on if she's a comic character, and it seems that there is a Selby from the comics, but it's not this Selby. This is potentially just a different thing altogether. And of course, we knew it was going to be Sam. Sam messes up the undercover situation by forgetting to turn off his phone, and his sister calls. Selby makes him put it on speakerphone. And then they all end up having to run off. Selby gets a bounty on her head. She gets killed, actually. That was the last we'll see of her. And then they end up running into none other than Sharon Carter. But Sharon, why is a girl like you in a place like this? Sharon would beat your ass for saying something like that. That was made perfectly clear in this episode. All of her fight scenes were superb, with her basically being the John Wick of Madripoor. Once again, the director and the writer being the John Wick guy. Clear and, very clear with all the fighting, but especially with Sharon and the way she was handled. It was amazing. How to answer why she's here, though. She was not offered the same deal that Sam was after Civil War. She is still seen as a wanted criminal in the eyes of the USA and has no problem letting these three know how mad she is about it. Madripoor does not allow extradition, so she is safe from the law there, if not from much else. The four of them now end up going to a port of Madripoor where their various tips and things have led them to. While Sharon stands guard outside, the three men go inside to one shipping container into a staircase that leads to one on top, and they find a whole science lab with the dude who's doing the thing. He is Dr. Wilfred Nagel. He was a scientist hired to recreate the serum before the blip. When he came back after the 5 years later return, this whole project had been forgotten, so he got back to work. Carly stole the 20 doses of the super serum that he had. In the comics, Nagel worked for Project Rebirth, which was a super soldier program trying to recreate Cap. In this episode, the TV version mentions Erskine, who was the guy who technically made Cap in the beginning, and how he successfully created the serum, and Nagel is only the second person in history to be able to do that, and he used Isaiah Bradley's blood to make it happen, and he calls him a subject and things like that, and it gets Sam pretty worked up about the way that he kind of talks about Isaiah not like a person. Meanwhile, on the outside, Sharon is fighting like everyone in Madripoor who are trying to get here to kill them, proving herself just absolute total boss. Zemo ends up killing Nagel before they go fighting alongside her too. He has a pretty cool scene coming out in his purple mask. He looked kind of cool. I gotta admit it, they made it work. Looks like the mask has some kind of thing lifting it, keeping it. I just put my hand before my face, like you're gonna see what I'm doing. Keeping it off his face, to shape it better, so he can still talk and everything underneath it. But after the fight, they have the whole jokes referring to Civil War, which are pretty funny, the moving the seat up and everything like that. In the end of the episode, of course, Bucky ends up following a trail of Kimoyo beads from Wakanda, which are made of those little glowy black and purple beads that are made of vibranium. And he ends up running into Ayo, saying he was wondering when she'd show up, and the episode ends. This obviously has me thinking they're gonna fight each other, right? Or maybe she's just taking the information back to Wakanda. Or maybe this is where we find out the start of Disney Marvel's plan on moving forward with the Black Panther movies without Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa. It's been long enough, they could easily have put a scene in here to start that path to whatever we'll be seeing in Black Panther 2. We could start getting that explanation in this next episode. That's pretty exciting. Or they could just fight each other and move on. Zemo probably won't end up back in jail, I'm thinking now. I don't see Wakanda letting him go back to a jail that is not in Wakanda if he does get recaptured. They'll want to keep an eye on him after this escape. And Bucky also may lose their goodwill, which I don't know if he can really take that. He needs allies. All we saw of John Walker as the new Cap and his Bucky buddy was basically them raiding the apparent someone who was taking care of Carly and her crew, and basically getting no information out of the people there because they don't like him. We now know that there are 20 super soldiers, up to 20 super soldiers fighting for Carly, including Carly. At one point in the episode, the Flag Smashers raid supplies from an outpost, and she ties the dudes up and lights a fire in the building, burning them alive and shocking her own team members. I read a thing this week that basically said this person was confused what we're supposed to feel about the Flag Smashers, and honestly, I couldn't agree more. Are we supposed to feel sympathy, hatred, apathy? They're kind of doing good for people who need it, but then she turns and burns a bunch of guards alive. So what are we supposed to think? And also, on the note of Carly, do you know how furious I'm going to be if they do the Sin thing with her? Sin is Red Skull's daughter. It's a character. S-Y-N, I think is how it's spelled. She's, or C-I, it's something weird. But anyway, she's Red Skull's, like, daughter or granddaughter or something in the comics, and at one point, I'm pretty sure it's Yelena Belova who accidentally splashes her face with, like, acid or something, and it ends up with Sin peeling her own face off, leaving her looking like her, father or whatever, Red Skull. I will be so mad if they do that with Carly. Now you've taken two female characters, mashed them into one, and instead of giving us one solid, comic accurate one. And we know Yelena Belova's gonna show up in the series. I will be pissed if that happens. If she does that to her and then does the whole Sin thing. Could have just made her Sin. Would have made a lot more sense than gender bending this character who, was I'm also curious, I was wondering this morning, we know that from the making of the WandaVision episode, they were able to switch around what was happening episode to episode, or rather, what was the exact scenes that were used, and the exact, footage that was used to react and respond to how fans were reacting, responding to the episodes as they were going along. Really, really cool that they could even do that. They had the time before, the episodes aired, that they could go in up to the last minute, basically, and change how things played out. Same final ending product, but it would have been a slightly different series of scenes to get there. And so I kind of wonder if the negative reaction of the Flag Smashers is going to be something that they have to tweak as we kind of go along here. However, we are already halfway through the series. This is episode 3 that we just watched, and it's going to be only 6 episodes. So, I don't know. We'll kind of see how that goes forward with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And of course, I'll be talking about episode 4 next Monday, the 12th of April, and hopefully it'll be a really great one that will have plenty of things like this to talk about. Next up, the 2 trailers of the week. Earlier in the week was Black Widow trailer, and this morning was the first, full-length, at least, Loki trailer. So we'll go ahead and go over that. The Black Widow trailer, it gave us a lot of footage that we've already seen, a fair amount of new stuff, but it was genuinely a much better trailer, in my opinion, which is good, because they've had over a year to perfect it. This shit better be killer. Ever Gabo Anderson, I believe is her name, is Mila Jojovich's daughter. She plays young Natasha, apparently, which works really well with her crazy colored hair. I follow Mila Jovovich on social media, and it's funny to see. I see her daughter, she posts about her daughter and her crazy hair colors that she dyes it. And then you see it, they're utilizing that in the Black Widow movie. That's kind of funny. Rachel Weisz is playing Melina Vostokov, who is Iron Maiden in the comics. She appears to be Nat's mother figure, and we see at least one shot of her with young Nat traveling together in a van. Florence Pugh, of course, is Yelena Belova, the second Widow from the comics, seeing as this movie takes place before Infinity War, where we see Natasha with blonde hair and in a green, tannish, black colored suit. That would make sense that she was dressing as Yelena, so the transition, whatever this transition between the two of them, would be smoother. They would kind of be seen as the same person. Yelena will be appearing in Hawkeye and apparently Falcon and the Winter Soldier too. Otherwise, she's clearly a younger sister figure for Nat, having been raised together, it seems, to some extent. It's kind of similar to what it is in the comics, it looks like. We also, the whole note about the outfit, that blonde hair with the green, black, and tannish colored suit is exactly what we see Yelena Belova in this movie, which is exactly what Natasha Romanoff wears when we first see her in Infinity War, so that's the connection I was making there. Then, of course, David Harbour is playing Red Guardian. There's also a female Red Guardian in the comics who is a member of the Defenders for a good while, but I honestly doubt we'll see her, at least for a good while, if we ever do. He seems to be their father-type figure, talking to them as kids about how they're his girls and whatnot. I'm not sure the sequence of events in their history we're gonna see. I'm not sure, did they rescue them from the Red Room or deliver them to it? This trailer kind of makes it look like Melina gives Natalie over to the Red Room, at least in part. So that's gonna be an interesting dynamic to see play out. Taskmaster, of course, we saw him a lot, or them a lot more clearly. They're getting a lot of hate for their appearance, but I personally really like it. To me, it looks like a Russian super soldier suit, which would be more about function over form, and then they put, like, the little grill in the front because, you know, we like things looking a little bit scary, so we're Russian. I don't know, I feel like it fits. His comic powers are that he can mimic anyone's fighting style, which we can already see parts of that coming up in the trailer, like mimicking Cap's throwing the shield and the the Black Panther claws. And then of course we saw the videos of him watching the fight footage, or them watching the fight footage, because of course we don't know who Taskmaster is going to be in this. Somebody in the comics, but we can, you know, guess it might be not that. My theory right now is that Melina might be dying, which is why Nat ends up wearing the same gray, kind of maroonish outfit for a lot of this movie that we see Melina in for much of what she's in the trailer for the like current day stuff, or what will be current day for it. It's also possible, on that sense, that Melina doesn't really die and is actually Taskmaster. I think maybe Taskmaster might be somebody Nat knows or possibly knew in her past in Russia. So that's also something that's potentially a big twist, a space for a big twist for them to put in. There are a lot of new action scenes in this trailer, and I almost wish I hadn't seen the bits of Black Widow fly fighting Taskmaster while they're free falling through the air, because it was honestly really cool. They definitely had time to spend extra time to tweak the visual effects on all of this, and it shows. And my bar has just gone soaring through the roof because I realized I had a year to perfect this movie. This movie better be the best MCU thing we've seen in a long time. This better be like Winter Soldier status good, which honestly from this trailer it could be. We're seeing some really, really good stuff, and I'm excited to watch this movie. Of course, it was pushed back again, I believe July 9th? I want to say July 9th. It'll be coming out towards the end of the Loki series, which is what I'll be getting into next. But in any case, I know the timing of all this was weird. The Black Widow movie, people asked for it for forever, and they made all these excuses, and there was clearly bullshit excuses, like, clearly bullshit. And then, of course, you know, whoever it was that came out and said, Kevin Feige, I think it was, who came out and said, yeah, we didn't want to make a Black Widow movie, an origin story in the middle of her character, you know, to introduce her character, because that would be stupid. I'm sorry, you literally did that with Captain Marvel. Just admitting you did a bad job with that one. Okay, you guys really rushed it. Hoping Captain Marvel 2 is gonna make the fuck up for Captain Marvel, the first movie. Which, you know, is a good enough movie, but I did not enjoy it on the second watch. The writing was terrible, and that was about it. Yeah, the writing was terrible. All the actors and everybody had good efforts. I'm getting so off base here. We gotta talk about the Loki thing. I love Captain Marvel. I have a Captain Marvel tattoo, don't get me wrong. The movie just was not what it could have been, especially in terms of writing. But anyway, moving on. The Loki trailer. I believe this is the first full-length trailer that we have gotten for this show, which will be coming out in June. Let me see, June, let me get the date. The date is June 11th. Yeah, Black Widow is July 9th, so it'll be coming out, the end of it as Black Widow comes out, so that's kind of cool. This just came out this morning, and a lot of cool stuff. So, as we get into this new, first of all, MCU show arena, let's say, with a totally different style, setting, and cast of characters, I kind of feel myself obligated to explain my own history somewhat with the topic, because it is a new topic we're going on now. I did talk about Thor a little bit when we were talking about Love and Thunder some weeks or episodes ago, but here's a little bit more. I have a I guess you could say, fairly solid, maybe basic plus knowledge of Thor and Loki's mythology from the comics and from actual mythology, I guess, too. I know a lot of basics, generals from the comics. I remember my sister was a really big fan of Loki and Thor for a long time, so I absorbed some of that from her. And then the old Walt Simonson Mighty Thor comics were some of my husband's first he ever read when he was a tiny little kid, and those were from his dad's collection. So that added some more knowledge, and we still have some of those comics. That added some more knowledge, absorption. And then the rest of that is just from my own research and reading. I've read a decent chunk of Jason Aaron's Thor runs here and there through time, which they've far more likely to pull from for the MCU, or rather already pulling from, I guess you could say, than the current Donny Cates stuff, which I am also reading. This trailer basically makes it look like Loki was picked up by the Time Variance Authority since he, as they say, broke time, kind of. They are predictably enlisting him in fixing it. However, this is Loki, so of course it won't be that easy. He's going to want to escape, and no doubt there are going to be figures throughout the various realities he's going to traverse who will definitely want to fight or even kill him. Loki seems to think that he can take or continue being steps ahead of them, while they kind of think the same things about themselves for being ahead of Loki. So I guess what we have here is he really going to be overly cocky and get away with it, or do they actually have an ace up their sleeves that they're gonna see him kept in line by the end? Some twist that keeps him, no, we've been ahead of you this whole time, kind of thing. And remember, this is Loki from post-Avengers circa 2012, which is well over a decade from where the current MCU is. This is a Loki who hasn't died. He has only tried to conquer once and only lost once. He hasn't lost either of his parents yet, and he has a fairly good reason to be cocky, especially cockier than the Loki that we saw right before getting his neck snapped by Thanos in Infinity War. We also get to see a clip of what I guess is their visualization of basically what Tilda Swinton's Ancient One talked to discussed with the Hulk in Endgame, how each diversion, basically, in history, splits off a new reality from that point. So I guess that's how they intend in him fixing his broken time, is by sending him to each of those points of those splits in the new timelines, and stopping them from ever splitting off. The question that I, in my head, come up with this that I'm going to have to ignore while watching the show is, if we're going by the multiverse theory of, every decision you make splits off a new multiverse, or new universe, the whole thing would just be a chunk of lines, right? That instead of just a line across with lines splitting out of it for their timeline, and the timeline splitting out of it would just be a chunk of line, right? Because every moment, every word you say, every breath, every instance would be, no, in this universe, a bomb dropped. In this universe, aliens attacked, something, whether it's wild and crazy or whether it's she sneezed in this universe, she coughed, she farted, whatever, like, minor changes to major changes. There's always going to be another universe that has that change, or some change, even if it's minute. There's a universe out there where I'm saying it's exactly the same as this, except I said, puked instead of farted a few minutes ago. That's where I'm going to get caught up, because if you're going really hardcore into the every decision you make makes a new universe, then I got really caught up in every decision you make, like, makes a new universe. And I'll just have to kind of rein my brain in while I watch this, because you just kind of have to ignore those things when you're watching these shows. But him hopping through the multiverse, going from one universe to another, is also going to leave plenty of room to lead into next year's Multiverse of Madness the same way that WandaVision will, or connect to it, I should say. So that'll be really exciting, what kind of teases for that we're going to see. So that's just really exciting. The Time Variance Authority seem to use his glowy doorways to get around. I'm not sure, honestly, how they do that in the comics. I never paid attention to that. But they're using glowy doorways here, and it's cool. I just think it looks cool. But on that note also, this is a post-Umbrella Academy on Netflix world. Therefore, timekeepers aren't necessarily original anymore. We've seen it now. The Umbrella Academy timekeepers they seem to be pretty similar to what this is. So I'm curious how they're going to pull it off, making it different. We can see differences already, but I'm curious how similar or different it will be to the Umbrella Academy version of basically the same thing, timekeepers. As for the people in the movie, the character Mobius is played by Owen Wilson. He is the chairman of the Time Variance Authority, who are the timekeepers. Gugu Mbatha Ra, who I probably mispronounced your name and I apologize. She was in Odd Thomas, which I remember her being in. She was in Larry Crown, and consistently, like, looking at her page online, it's consistently, like, 2 movies per year for the last 7 years or so. So that's pretty incredible of a career. She is playing Judge Renslayer is what the name we have so far is. So we can kind of assume that that's Ravonna Renslayer from the comics, and that Judge is just the title, like Judge Dredd. Which is also kind of funny they're using that. I imagine it must be from the comics, and these things just cross over funkily and they steal from each other the way they always have. But what's interesting about her is that she was a love interest of sorts of Kang's in the comics as well. We already have rumors that Jonathan Majors is Kang. Jonathan Majors, of course, being the lead from Lovecraft Country, the male lead. He's playing Kang, and we already have the rumors that he's going to briefly appear in this series before he appears as a character in Ant-Man 3, which is what Quantumania, I think what they're calling it. So it's interesting to think maybe she's going to be why he appears here, if that rumor is true and he actually does. And that's potentially, again, tying this series into a future MCU movie, Ant-Man 3. So that's exciting. Other things we know is that a character called Young Sylvie was cast. We can assume that is Sylvie Lufton, the second Enchantress, because there are also rumors that Enchantress will be one of the main villains, so it would likely be this version of her. I'd be curious also, it would be Disney, Marvel, Disney, whatever, going again for a younger generation of a legacy character like Captain Marvel, as the main one introduced to the audience. So I don't know if possibly, as far as I know, Sylvie Lufton is not the more popular Enchantress. I believe the main Enchantress, whose name I don't recall at the moment, who is actually Asgardian, is the one who, is the main version. I don't know. Maybe people do like this version. It's popular. I don't know. We also know Loki will reportedly shapeshift into a woman in the show, which I believe there were some leaked behind-the-scenes photos of theorized Lady Loki in question that leaked last year. Young Loki is also thought to be a key player in the series, and in turn, that definitely means that we could see Thori, his dog. I think it's hilarious that through this show being made and, slowly announced as it is, the very low-selling Vote Loki series from a few years ago is going to be so valuable now, since it seems that Marvel has used a lot of visual inspiration for at least one part of an episode. We see in the trailer Loki wearing the same suit and crown look with a Vote Loki button, taken almost exactly from that comic series. So you can imagine that the price of that is gonna skyrocket, especially after the show premieres, which it will premiere on June 11th, and Black Widow will premiere on July 9th, which I think the finale of Vote Loki is the week after that. So we don't quite have something every week for Marvel for the rest of the year, but it's pretty close. We're only missing 3 or 4 weeks, I think, so that's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and cover Black Lightning as far as I'm into it now before we go into Godzilla vs. Kong. So we can wrap it up with Godzilla vs. Kong, because that'll be a lot of fun to talk about. At the point that we are in it now, we are into Season 3. Season 2 basically ends with Lynn's agent, Boss Man, approaching the family, telling them he knows about who they are exactly, that they're all metahumans, and besides, Lynn, obviously, and they will need to prepare for the Markovians using their metahuman stash to attack Freeland. as far as we are into season 3, it's clear that this ASA guy is clearly straight up evil, for a couple of reasons. So he's a problem right now. And then you have Jennifer, who is Lightning. She's fully part of the team, or at least was, but now she's getting involved with the ASA guy. He's got, the bad guy, Tobin? No, something or other with the T. He's got him in lockup, which, is great, but he keeps torturing him randomly, and now he's telling him he's gonna let him out. So it's kind of not sure what he's up to with that whole thing. Meanwhile, Khalil is dead, but at the same time not. It was more sad for Jen than for him, probably, because Jen had to watch him die, and he just let him go. It was terrible. Just, honestly, death was probably release for him. Best way it could have ended for him at that point. It was pretty awful. He got his back ripped out, basically. But now he's back. He seems to have been brought back without his consciousness. The Khalil part of him is probably actually dead, and now all that's left is his body, which is being used by that ASA guy, and he sent him off to kill his own mother, which he did. So, bit of a problem there that they're gonna run into. Jefferson had the opportunity to go back to being principal again and back down, saying that he knows he can't, well, not saying this, but he basically knew that he couldn't give his all to the school if he's still Black Lightning. Lynn, meanwhile, was having a hard time in season 2 after the death of 14 of her patients, the pod kids, which honestly is a weird term that's been thrown around on the show a lot. And the whole project was kind of taken out of her hands at this point into the ASA. She's not really in charge of it anymore. And they got her hooked on a more addictive form of green light, which I guess she thinks that it's helping her think better. But every sign that we see is basically she's hooked on this stuff like heroin. It's not going to be good. Season 4, I think, is what they're on right now. Once I catch up with where they are, I will be doing regularly scheduled the recaps, unless it's mid-season or something, in which case, obviously, that won't be happening, because it won't be airing. But I'm still thoroughly enjoying Black Lightning. It's really fantastic, honestly. A lot of these characters are very, very minor characters from the comics, from recent to long ago. So, it's kind of cool to see how they're picking these, off-kilter kind of characters and making them something better, or rather, different and possibly more integral to the story, in this series. So in this show. So that's really fun. Finally, it's time to talk about Godzilla vs. Kong. I have to say, first off, there will be two 96-page graphic novels released tomorrow as official prequels to this movie that will also cover the events of past comic series about the characters. So, one for Kong and one for Godzilla, so keep your eyes open for those at your local comic shop, or just go in and ask. There will be graphic novels, 96 pages. Also, I have to mention, I will probably be just letting loose with the cussing in this section, because honestly, if you can't talk about this kind of shit without ecstatic cursing, it wasn't good enough. So just be forewarned, that is probably going to happen. My own preference, admittedly, before this movie even started, is that I like Godzilla more. I know I shit on movie theaters all the time on this podcast. I don't particularly like going to movie theaters, but the theater experience of seeing him light up his blue power-up blast for the first time in the 2014 Godzilla movie was easily on par, if not somewhat better, than Cap picking up the hammer in Endgame, because it was just so fucking badass. People yelled in surprise and then cheered. It was awesome. Fuck the naysayers. I loved that movie. Nobody wants to pay attention to the human plot anyway when they go to a monster movie. Stop shitting on the human plot of it. That's not what we were all here to watch. Just get over it. The human plot sucked. Yeah. It's always gonna suck in monster movies because that's not why we're here. We don't care about that. It's just nature of the beast. Pun intended a little bit. This movie, or I guess that movie, the 2014 monster Godzilla movie, gave us exactly what we wanted from a monster movie. Badass monster battles, that's all we need. The same goes for King of the Monsters and for Godzilla vs. Kong in this movie. Skull Island, I gotta say, actually had a pretty solid human plot, though. Gotta give it that. Definitely the best human element of all of these monster movies. The cast, we have Alexandra Skarsgård as the brilliant but socially inept scientist. Millie Bobby Brown as the teen who knows it all and is impossibly confident. She was in King of the Monsters, but I genuinely do not know what she did in it. I straight up ignored the human element in King of the Monsters. I don't know what happened. I know where the battles happened. That's what I cared about. It was pretty awesome. Didn't give a shit about the people. Julian Dennison, who is the mutant kid who talks about prison pockets in his butt from Deadpool 2. He plays her kind of loser friend, I guess you could say. Rebecca Hall plays the good scientist, I suppose, on the Kong side of things. She's been in a couple of things. She dies a lot in her movies, but she could totally still come back into the MCU and play Madame Mask, because she's another, like, entity who Tony scorned by being, well, Tony in Iron Man 3. We saw that flashback, right? She was supposed to be Madame Mask, and then they end up going with the other plot that was kind of meh. But we can definitely still have room for her in the MCU as Madame Mask. If they brought in, what's his name? Mysterio as being one of the scorned Tony people, you can definitely say that was Madame Mask, too. Come on. Anyway. Eliza, I think is what her name is, Isa Gonzalez, as the evil daughter of the nefarious rich guy villain who dies suddenly when Kong crushes her transport. Damien Bashir as her evil dad who creates the Act 3 villain. And then Brian Tyree Henry, who you might know from Paperboy in Atlanta, as Phastos in Eternal, and Miles' dad in Into the Spider-Verse. He is playing the, like, podcast guy who's really big on, aliens and conspiracies and shit, who ends up helping Millie Bobby Brown and, Butt Pocket Kid. Kyle Chandler as Millie Bobby Brown's dad, but I honestly don't remember him having any scenes. He was in it, apparently. I don't remember it. There's more to the cast, but that's basically it. They don't matter that much anyway, and obviously there's going to be a fuck ton of spoilers in this. Everything I say is spoilers. The movie opens on Skull Island, of course, where we know Kong lives. Kong's being kept in a containment unit so Godzilla can't sense him and come to battle for superiority, because I guess that's what they do. They reveal that he's in the dome by him chucking a tree that he shaved into a giant fucking spear at the sky, and it hits the dome, which is disguised as sky, and you see that it's actually a wall. There's a little deaf girl who has apparently long since befriended him, and Rebecca Hall as the science lady, who may or may not be her mother. It's super unclear. I don't think they ever really clarified that. I think Skarsgård is brought in to help figure out what to do with Kong at this point, because he can't stay there, I guess, in that dome. Not really sure. Again, I was watching this movie not for the human elements whatsoever. In any case, they basically figure out they can take Kong back to the center of the earth, where they think his people came from. Okay, I guess that adds a sci-fi fantasy element that's kind of fun, but alright. They knock him out and put him on a boat, which, great idea, guys. I don't see how that could go wrong. Meanwhile, Godzilla's just been minding his own business, tramping through Hong Kong or whatever, being bombarded by bombs, which clearly do nothing, so why are they still bombing him? He eventually senses Kong and heads off in that direction. Kong starts losing it when Godzilla gets close. When Godzilla gets close, Skarsgård finally lets him out of the gigantic fucking chains, and they battle it out. they've been transporting him alongside a fleet of like 6 big ol' aircraft carriers, and they all get destroyed. It is nuts. Preview of destruction to come, but my god, there was probably hundreds of people who died in that one scene. And the end of the scene, Godzilla is totally winning. He's totally killing Kong. And the humans end up nuking him and making off with Kong while he's distracted. And you see Godzilla surfacing and watching angrily as they basically flee. And they have to fly him in with helicopters to avoid that happening again. Meanwhile, evil rich scientist guy is building something, a big red eye. The nerds in the group got really excited when we saw it. Somehow 11, Paperboy, and Prison Pocket Kid end up accidentally going to Hong Kong on an underground speedway that definitely humans cannot survive travel in. They basically wind up discovering the big twist of the movie, Mechagodzilla. Fucking yes. It's been, since basically they announced this movie, my husband has been kind of half kidding, saying that, you know, I bet it's gonna be Mechagodzilla that they end up having to team up and fight. And lo and behold, it is goddamn Mechagodzilla. I cannot make this shit up. It is crazy brilliant. Evil rich guy thinks that the way to beat Godzilla and have humans be, as he says, on top again, because I guess we were ever on top, is to use this mech version of itself, Godzilla, built from somewhat, I guess, operated somehow through the DNA of the Ghidorah skeleton, the 3-headed dragon, to help the guy who's like piloting along. Like it taps into the brain of the creature through the DNA somehow. But there are somehow problems with the power supply, which is why Evil Rich Dude had his Evil Rich daughter hitchhike with the Kong people to the center of the Earth. The Kong crew make it to the center of the Earth entrance, and it's in the Arctic. They basically have the deaf kid trick Kong into thinking that there's something down there waiting for him, family-wise, and so he goes getting all excited, and they follow him. Gravity flips, ta-da, they're at the center of the Earth, which somehow has sunlight and fresh air and stuff, but it looks sick, so I'll roll with it. It was actually a really cool appearance if it didn't make any fucking sense. Kong kind of runs along, exploring for a while, as he does, and has to fight the local giant bat snake creatures, which ends up being fairly easy for him. There's a neat scene of him going from one, basically side of the center of the Earth to the other, since it's like a ceiling and a floor with a gravity, respective to whichever side you're on. And then if you get up to the tip of the mountain, you can jump to the other side, flip gravity, and now be on the other side, and that's your floor now. If that makes sense. He finally finds this cave that, honestly, this was straight out of Lord of the Rings and the Mines of Moria, where his ancestors or whoever ruled from, and he powers up this big blue axe boy, and it's a, crazy cool scene, whatever. The evil rich daughter steals some of the blue power source that's scattered throughout the center of the Earth place, and sends its chemical makeup to the surface for her father right before Kong crushes her whole ship. R.I.P. Evil Rich Girl. It honestly gets kind of fuzzy here, but basically Kong and the humans wind up back on the surface, and he fights Godzilla again, destroying pretty much all of Hong Kong. They had evacuations and stuff going on, but they definitely killed like hundreds of thousands of people, if not more. This time in the fight, once again, I guess, Godzilla brutalizes him, basically kills Kong. The humans end up having to revive him with a piece of the blue energy source right in time for helping Godzilla fight Mechagodzilla. Mechagodzilla ended up killing the human pilot that was riding it, and being Ghidorah again, basically, with inside the Mechagodzilla body. So it goes and it attacks Godzilla, of course, hating Godzilla. And then Kong shows up and rips its head off. So, yay! It actually, it looked really bad for a while, and then Kong kind of ends up getting his moment to save the day, in the end. The movie ends with Godzilla and Kong kind of gangster nodding at each other and heading off in their various directions. Once again, Godzilla clearly won. If we're talking about the Godzilla versus Kong thing, this was clearly Godzilla won. Sure, Kong came in and saved the day because the humans revived him and saved his ass. Godzilla is the king of the beasts here, guys. I think that was made pretty obvious how he could have, it could have gotten worse, and they just decided, you know what, we're just not going to do that. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope people had a lot of fun with it as much as I did. Mechagodzilla was a thrill to see. And that wraps up about this week's episode. I think I've gone a little overboard in my length this week. I always mention the length of the episodes. I don't know why I get so caught up on it. If you have any kind of thoughts about anything that I've said, or that you would like to hear, or questions or comments or concerns or anything, go ahead and let me know on whatever media device or format you're listening to on. This is of course available on YouTube, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. I'm working on getting a few others in there, but we'll see how that goes. So let me know, and if you do watch it on, YouTube, you can do the whole like and subscribe thing. Same on really all the other things. You can rate the podcast wherever you listen to. That would be very helpful in getting more people able to listen to it, so I would appreciate that. Otherwise, you can find me elsewhere online. I have a website, sensationalshegeek.weebly.com, like Sensational She-Hulk, but with geek instead of Hulk, because I'm a big fan of the character, of course. On my site, I have, of course, all the links to my podcast information, as well as some of the writing that I have been doing. I haven't done so much since I've started the podcast, but I have also been including podcast notes for the potentially hard of hearing, or if you just prefer to read the podcast instead of hear me say it. I have all the notes that I take for the podcast throughout the week, written and copied out on my website, in case you're more interested in that, as well as the things that I write, and female character reading orders from my favorite characters. On social media, you can find me at Instagram. My username is Anna with the Comics. You can find me on Twitter. My username is Savage She-Geek, because sensational was too many letters. And thank you very much once again for listening. If you've made it this far, I truly appreciate you having done so, and I hope that you are back again on Friday. The next episode is going to be Friday the 9th of April. So go ahead and keep your ears open for that on Friday the 9th. And we'll be talking about the things that I really enjoyed from comics from this week. And, of course, any other pop culture, comic book, geek culture, news, updates, announcements, things like that kind of happen between now and then. There's always something, so expect, lots of news and things, as always. Thank you again for listening, if you have been doing it for the whole episode, for any amount of time, really, that you've listened to this podcast. I appreciate any support that you have whatsoever. And meanwhile, have an excellent week. And stay sweaty.